Envase Technologies creates a suite of solutions that makes it easier to run your trucking business. For drivers and carriers, our solutions put control back in your hands with a TMS, capacity and storage marketplace, and rate management system. Optimize your operations with less administrative headaches and increase the value of your time spent on and off the clock. Envase Technologies, driving progress, delivering innovation. For more information, visit envasetechnologies.com. That's ENVASE Technologies.com.
Hey, supply chainers, wherever you are in the world, this is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, and I am the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, Blended Podcast, founder of the Blended Pledge as well. And I'm still getting over this cold. So just to let you know, there could be some coughing going on, but I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum. I don't know if anybody else has had this 100-day cough. I'm hoping that it's not going to be 100 days for me. Anyways, I hope you all are having a great week. Now let's talk a little bit about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain, because Audrey Ross is joining me in the hot seat today, and she's got a lot to talk about when it comes to the market update. We're going to be talking about blockchain. There are some questions around that, what you need to know about chatbots as well. And I cannot wait to get into that conversation. But let's talk about what's happening here. So we've got a brand new episode. Ryan Peterson, CEO of Flexport, gave us a sneak peek behind the curtain as to what's happening at Flexport. So he was in the hot seat. I asked him some questions about what was going on in 2023 and what we can expect in 2024 as well. So if you have not gone to take a look at this episode, it's episode 396, wherever you tune into the show, and you're definitely not going to want to miss what he is talking about. Next, we've got Supply Chain Unfiltered. Now, this is hosted by Christine Barnhart, coming out tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, if you cannot attend live, you definitely want to click the attend button, because I will send you the link so that you can watch the replay of it. And Christine brings such a magic and energy to the industry, and I cannot wait to see what she has to talk about tomorrow. So click that attend button and join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Next, March 28th, so that's next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be talking with Dennis, Mark, Travis, and we're going to be talking about Beyond Drayage TMS, 3 technology trends that are revolutionizing the intermodal trucking industry. Now, you're not going to want to miss this, because we are going to talk about all of the trends, what you need to know about intermodal trucking. Plus, we're going to be giving you some advice on what to think about, what to be doing for the rest of 2024. So click the attend button, join us. And if you can't join us live, I'll send you the link to that as well. Next, I wanted to show this to you because my team did a really great job of putting this together. And for Women's Month, how can we help women succeed in the supply chain world? Now, we brought together some tips and tricks. Networking is one of them. You know that we have a virtual monthly meetup for women in supply chain as a part of the Secret Society of Supply Chain. Networking is a huge part of that, bringing community together, bringing support. Invest in the women in your organizations. Mentorship is a big part of that as well. Industry associations, invest in your team members so that they can go to industry associations, they can be members there, and they can get the support from the community as well. So I hope you saw that and enjoyed that one just as much as I did. All right, I think that's about it. Now it's time to bring up Audrey. Good morning, Audrey. How you doing?
Good morning. Well, I think we have the same cough, so I'm doing as well as that.
We spent too much time together at TPM.
Yeah, that's probably it.
For
all the fun we had.
All the fun we had. Now, before you introduce yourself, because I'm pretty sure there's probably not too many people out there that don't know who you are. Anybody who's in the audience, I want to know where you're tuning in from. So put it in the comments. We'd love to give you a shout out. And so Audrey, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Audrey Ross. I'm tuning in from Toronto, which is about to become quite snowy.
Is it? Are we expecting a lot of snow?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a little chilly here too. It's a little fresh for the start of spring. I think we're at, I don't know, 40 for the Americans-ish, 35,
Oh,
40
it's cold. Yeah,
for our
I don't
American friends in
outside.
Fahrenheit, and we're around sort of 1 to 3 degrees Celsius for everybody else. Yeah, what am I up to? This year's an interesting year. We're up to Blended Pledge. So I'm part of the Blended Pledge group, which is a favorite of mine. Hi, Bayram. And I'm also the president of OIT Toronto for this year. So we're just working out some board positions and getting ready to really roll into some events. So yeah, that keeps me busy.
Awesome. I love that. All right. So let's get to the poll of the week. Actually, first, I want to say hi to James and Tayeb over on my personal LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us and for commenting. All right. So we've got a poll. So we ask you all a question every single Wednesday morning on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn and Instagram. So last week we asked you, which one would you prefer? Now we had almost 400 votes on this one. And 94% of you said better pay, over
Yeah.
6% of you that said better job title. Now, I know you answered, you actually responded in the comments here, Audrey.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what you thought about this particular poll.
I mean, titles, they're not unimportant. They're not unimportant. Like they do have an impact on sometimes your credit rating, your bank situation. If your title stays sort of stagnant or fixed for a long period of time, it can sort of that sort of has, probably inherent bias, but has sort of can work against you in financial services, because it is sort of how they measure movement, progress, ambition in sort of your career. So it's not unimportant, but out of the two things in this market, yeah, it's the pay.
Yeah, it didn't really surprise me too much. And I want to hear from everybody who's watching in the audience right now. Would you prefer a better job title or a better pay? Or maybe there's something else that you would prefer as well. I know Justin was talking about
he came in,
a position that would allow him to shape the culture, make positive changes where changes are needed. Sonia said both of these and a great company culture. I don't settle. I love that.
Yes.
And Federico, the right cultural fit and environment, that needed to be an option. Now, we wanted to leave it at just those two options, just to see what everybody would say. We didn't want to give too many options because it's interesting to see. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they have a C-suite title.
Yeah.
And I was talking to them about, personal branding, and what happens after the C-suite title. When everything sort of goes away and, people aren't commenting as much because you don't have that C-suite title or the C-suite title attached to that particular company anymore, what happens? Sometimes those speaking engagements go away, right? Sometimes that engagement goes away on social media that you are used to. And so I think when we think about, job title, you're right. There is some inherent bias around it. And there are some things that come with that particular title, depending on what that title is, that gives you a bit of a safety net. And so the idea behind the job title is thinking about what happens after the job title and who am I without it?
That's a big question, Sarah. Who am I if I'm not this job title, or who am I if I'm not in this position? Especially, if you've been somewhere for a few years, right? Who am I if I'm not here? What does that look like? What does that mean? Right. And I think we can't, we do get sort of, and as humans, we like to get sort of comfortable and have familiar things. And, but yeah, understanding what that means and how to work a personal brand is sort of key for maintaining those opportunities as tied to you and not to, another brand or another company.
Yeah, I mean, I went through that, right? Director of sales and marketing all the way to a receptionist of a tennis club, because I had to do what I had to do because I wanted to build my own company. And that was a weird transition. There was a lot of soul searching within that year, trying to find a job. Do I really want a job? Do I want to start my own company? How do I support myself while I start that company? So lots of different things to think about. All right. So let's get into the market update. What are you seeing? What is happening? I know that Lars gave a really great update at TPM that you were a part of around the Red Sea.
Fantastic.
Talk to us about what's happening.
Yeah, his overall update on sort of forecasting what the shape of the world is going to look like and how we're going to interact how our supply chains are going to interact and intersect with that new sort of world it was a fascinating session. Like, it's an absolute can't miss. And it was a packed room. So,
well, before you go on, I am going to
Yeah.
say I've got Lars coming on the show. I think it's next week. He's coming on Thoughts and Coffee next week. So you
That's
definitely want to
exciting.
tune in for that, because he's going to be giving us those updates as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's definitely got probably the strongest view on the Red Sea crisis. Of course, he's reporting that, and it's been, I think we're at day 96 or day 97 now. It's been ongoing for a while. We're still seeing attacks. There was an announcement made by sort of the leader of this Houthi group on escalating that and trying to even have an impact on the vessels that are diverting around, even though they're avoiding the area, to sort of expand the area. So there is a lot of kind of concern around what that situation is looking like, because it is active. It's active. It's a military situation at this point. So there's a lot of high risk there. I think for most of us, now that the diversions are sort of settled, and the vessels are moving, we now have, the calendar's been updated. Your routes options are kind of published and posted. We're sort of coming out of the post Chinese New Year or Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year kind of holiday season. So we're sort of getting back into the regular, routine of business, I guess. And then we'll start heading into peak season, in June, July, August, and we're likely to see higher volumes. I mean, we had a fairly normal kind of Chinese New Year experience, kind of back to, what we had. Bob. And then we do have some good news on Panama. We are seeing they've increased by 2 to 4 vessels a day, 2 vessels a day now, increase. So I think the report I saw was right about 26 or 27 vessels passing through, which is still about 10 short of the usual kind of 38 that we would have seen, but sort of pre these drought conditions. But that is promising, because most of us weren't really expecting any change there until May or June. And there's been a lot of kind of concern or questions on, like, do we start diverting? If there's a labor issue on the East Coast ports, do we start diverting some of that cargo into the West Coast? Do we sit and wait for Panama? Do we divert that cargo? So there's been a lot of like, oh, how do I make the best decision, and what's going on? So it's nice to see that alleviate even just a little bit. And yeah, I hope that covers that's a lot of places that they're.
No, I think that's a really great update. One of the things around the Red Sea that I did want to bring up was the conditions for the seafarers. So I feel like we haven't really spoken about that since the pandemic. That was brought up a lot, right? Because you've got the crews of these vessels that are having to manage these vessels throughout some of these disruptions and throughout some of these crises. And I know that we did lose a couple of seafarers over the last month or so because of the disruption in the Red Sea. And, our heart goes out to their families, but I also want to bring and shed a light on the seafarers, their well-being, the concern for them, again, because we've kind of gone quiet since the pandemic. So just wanted to put that out there.
And I think Lars does a good job of reflecting on, like, this, we're sort of seeing we're getting reports of minimal damage, right?
Right.
So the reports are like it's minimal damage, or there was a small fire. There was 1 or 2 containers affected, but really, someone had come in his comments, Jean-Francois, can't remember his last name, but he'd come in and said, like, just because it's minimal damage, I mean, your seafarers, your crew members are literally having missiles shot at them.
Right.
Constantly. They are constantly under a security threat. And now we've seen a couple of attacks sort of from the Somali pirate kind of area. There was a vessel that was just rescued and released after 3 months of, I think, almost 30 crew members being in captivity. So I mean, that impact can't be understated. And to your point, these are the people who are literally frontline moving your goods, and these are some very dangerous conditions, and they remain so. And I mean, for me, it's tough. I mean, we're moving things that are sort of lighter on the scale of commodities, and so it's certainly tough to watch that be happening. So I think as long as there are, we can probably drop them in the comments, but there are groups to support our seafarers. So if you are thinking about, offering some support or, aligning with the advocacy that it's already being made on their behalf, like definitely
Let's
look
do
into
it.
that because
Yeah.
yeah,
And they're big.
they're putting their lives on the line to move this cargo and keep these ships going. And,
Yeah.
it's not a good situation.
Yeah. And they're part of our supply chain family, right? We all need to look out for each other. All right,
Yeah.
let's get to our first article. So the first article that we're talking about today is why blockchain technology hasn't dominated the supply chain yet. I feel like we've been talking about blockchain off and on forever. I feel like when we bring up blockchain today, it's kind of like, really, are we going back down this route? Is it coming back? Like, what is happening? But the question in this article is, why hasn't blockchain taken over supply chain? And they're saying that back in 2017, it was the perfect fit for supply chain management. Was it? I'm not sure. But is this a comeback for blockchain? They're saying the reason why blockchain needs to be popular within supply chain are a few reasons. One is decentralization, which is equal authority and the balance of power. Now, the one thing that came up for me in this particular instance is then who takes responsibility and who takes accountability for what is happening within the blockchain if you have a balance of power, right? It talks about transparency, having the same data. And they used an example of medicine and how blockchain can help with authenticity and expiry and just making sure that obviously the medicines are great. So that's great for healthcare supply chains. But supply chains really run the gamut of, what products actually run through the supply chain. And I don't know if that's really going to be a sticking point necessarily for everybody. And how do we get all the same data together if we can't even bring some of the people to the same tables to have the same conversations? Anyways, those were 2 out of the 4. I'm going to stop there because I want to give you an opportunity to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those tools that a lot of people can see has a lot of positives to it, and so the concept of this sort of the centralization where you don't have fragmented pieces of information or access, or it reduces the risk of cyber attacks, right? Because you have this sort of housed in a way that can maintain the authenticity of the information. But to your point, Sarah, we're talking about an industry that can't, like, is sort of historically behind in the use of technology, has a total lack of standardization. Like it's a struggle. I'm going to be doing an Incoterms webinar on Thursday with the Expert Development Canada, because it's one of the hottest topics, right? It's like those 11 terms should be the most commonly used, and it's like it's still like unclear, and that was a 50-year effort to get people to use the same contract terms. So you still have people who have no idea what they are. So it's an interesting industry, and like you say, like there are pluses for things like cosmetics, things like healthcare that have these expiry dates or have these sort of parameters that need to be maintained. It's all plus, but you can see some real hurdles in kind of adopting something that you have to share. You have to, we have to have standardization, and you have to behave well together. And this industry, it's like, oh, well, we'll see.
Well, one of the words that they used in the article, and I highly recommend you go and check out this article because it does talk about, the benefits, but then it also talks about the hurdles and what we need to go through to get there, if we're going to get there. But one of the words they used is unchangeability. Is that a word? I mean, I feel like I should have probably looked this up before we went on air. But I looked at the word and I was like, is that actually a word? But they use it as one of the reasons why we should have blockchain in supply chain. And they talk about it around the fact that on the blockchain, you cannot erase any data.
Yeah.
So basically, it keeps the integrity of the data that's within the supply chain and within, I guess, the life cycle of a shipment that's on the blockchain.
Mhm.
And, I think about that, and I think about how things can be doctored. I think about what you said around cybersecurity, right? Logistics and supply chain are one of the most targeted industries for cyber attacks. And
Mhm.
they're saying that it can also help with less breaches and, again, no altering. So one of the things that they really focus in on here is you cannot alter the data. And
Yeah.
so one of the questions that I had while I was reading this, I was like, are we known for that? Like, are we known for altering data on, really important documents? Because I don't
Yeah.
think that we are. I'm sure it has probably happened in the past, and we want to be secure and make sure that nobody does it. But I don't think that that's something that we're known for. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the hurdles that they were talking about around blockchain being a part of the supply chain is cost.
Yeah.
Regulations. We're a highly regulated industry. And so, again, how do you get everybody to the table to talk about the rules and regulations and how to incorporate blockchain? Scalability was one of the hurdles. And then, obviously, the traditions. Because we are, like you said, a traditional industry. And
Mhm.
so it is a little bit more difficult to move, sort of that boat in a different direction. Any
It's a
other
good
thoughts on
one.
that?
It's a good one. And yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, that especially as we move into, a world that has more access or more threat, maybe from, not necessarily just, I mean, cybersecurity is sort of the blanket term I use because it's, not my area, but I mean, yeah, anything that's going to corrupt the data, anything
Mhm.
that's going to corrupt what your shipment is,
Yeah.
right? The risks of, I mean, the risks of not being clear and not stating true information and not being able to verify it. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Key to successful supply chains of the future.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, and let's talk about this particular story. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you're in the US, if you've seen this particular story, but Air Canada is our, beloved airline here in Canada, and they started using chatbots. Now, the chatbot gave somebody in British Columbia on the West Coast some wrong information about how to actually go about getting a refund for bereavement. I think it was like a
Yeah.
bereavement flight,
A
because I think
bereavement flight.
you can get better.
A discounted fare for to
Right,
attend the funeral or service for a loved one or yeah.
right. And so you're probably wondering, well, why are we talking about this and how does this relate to supply chain? Well, we bring this one up because we are in supply chain looking at adopting technology, or we're already adopting technology. And chatbots is one of those. I actually just recorded an episode with somebody yesterday who said that they had incorporated chatbots in their logistics company. And that episode comes out in just a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that one. The reason why I bring this up is because the man or the person in BC was very successful in taking Air Canada to court over the misinformation that the chatbot gave them. And they were not, so Air Canada was not going to give them a refund because they were saying that they are not responsible for the information that comes out from the chatbot.
Mhm.
And so this brings up a very good point. If you're using chatbots, if you are using AI in your supply chain and it gives out the wrong information, which then leads to a shutdown of a line, maybe it leads to a penalty down the line. Who is responsible for that? And so the judge in this particular case found that Air Canada's chatbot, they were responsible for the information that came out through their chatbot, and they were responsible to make sure that the information came out true. And so that's why I wanted to bring this conversation to light, because as we get into chatbots and technology and AI, it begs the question of reasonable care. Are you taking reasonable care with the information that you're putting out through your chatbots? And who is responsible? Because the people who are using the chatbots will be taking screenshots. They will have proof if something and some misleading information is provided by chatbots. And it's something that we all need to be aware of. Audrey, what did you think about this?
I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's a very low cost, sort of low value kind of situation, but legally it's very interesting because,
Mhm.
Air Canada really did try to play like, well, our bereavement policy is on this other page of the website.
Mhm.
So the accurate information is over here. And the person had looked at that, but
Mhm.
that's not what the chatbot said. So this sort of, oh, well, our chatbot gave misleading information and sort of thought that that was a period statement. You're like, no, like the chatbot is part of your website. So even if there's inaccurate information on one part of the website and accurate information on the other part of the website, that's not the customer's responsibility.
Mhm.
Right. So certainly it was an interesting conversation on who's responsible for your website and the information on it. You are. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a AI generated chatbot because you've attached it to your website.
Mhm.
It's definitely an interesting case, in this situation. But like you say, it does lead the question of like, what have you checked? Have you checked what kind of information your chatbot is giving out? Because you potentially will be held entirely responsible. I mean, that's the risk with these technologies. When we kind of get ahead of ourselves because of the novelty or this sort of excitement,
Mhm.
and then then you face then it gets into court and you face sort of the real risk of it. So
Yeah. And just to put this into context, this was over $650.
yeah, it was a
Mhm.
very small money, but reputationally, it's another hit for Air Canada.
Yeah, well, and was it really worth the $650 to go through all of this? So this is the other part of it, is when
Mhm.
somebody's coming to you and letting you know that your chatbot has given misleading information, how are you going to handle that situation
Mhm.
when it comes up? Is there something that you can do with them to make it right
Mhm.
and potentially help with that fine? I mean, we could be
Mhm.
talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that could come from a mistake from a chatbot. And so I just wanted to let the supply chain community know that this is definitely something that is possible if you are using chatbots, and to make sure that the data that you are feeding into these chatbots is reliable and is not misleading, and because you have the reasonable care of
Yeah.
providing the right information to your clients. All right.
Mm.
Didn't want to scare everybody, but really
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there because I feel like we're getting into that side of things when we think
Yeah.
about AI and chatbots. All right. So the last article that we're going to be talking about today is around professional
Also,
conferences are full of harassment. Now, Audrey and I go to a lot of conferences.
Mhm.
We're also founders of, the Blended Pledge. One of the reasons why we don't see diverse voices attending or speaking at conferences is because of travel expenses. But I can tell you that this is a close second. And so I wanted to bring this up because we are in full force of professional conferences right now, especially in this industry. And I go back to what I said at the beginning with that particular article, or what we put together around supporting women in supply chain. And it's some of the things that we need to think about, or that women think about when we go to conferences. And they're talking about a tech conference or a legal conference that this happened at. But then they were also talking about how women have come out and talked about some of the other instances where this has happened to them. And I think talking about how we can support women within the professional conference sector, there's a few ways to be able to do that. We are very lucky that we've got a lot of support when we are at conferences. I'm not walking alone to different things. They're making sure that I have somebody to walk with to a different dinner or a different event or things like that. At TPM, we were able to get a women's lounge just so we could, have somewhere to go as a safe space, things like that. But they're saying that 39% of keynote speakers reported harassment. So what did you think about this, Audrey?
I mean, there's sort of two pieces that work for me, because there's this sort of historical of, women face a lot of discrimination, or really anyone who's sort of other, faces a lot of discrimination in the workplace in general, and conferences are no exception. I do think in the last year, sort of coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people are dealing with mental health issues and stress issues. I don't think people are on their best behavior. I think there can be a real like lack of professionalism that people are calling out, but you still have to kind of go through it.
Yeah.
which is interesting. So I think we do need to do some self work on all of us, just how our stress levels are and how we're reacting in
Mhm.
situations and what is professionalism. And it's certainly not some of the examples we saw in this article. And so at these conferences, like the level of tolerance for that is really important. And again, back to what we were talking about with Air Canada, the reasonable care as a conference organizer. Like, yes, there are situations that might be offsite, but how much are you taking responsibility to ensure that your conference is a safe environment, right?
Mhm.
And we do run into, especially when you add sort of alcohol into the mix, a lack of security, or just a seeming lack of like, oh, this is the kind of minor behavior that'll be tolerated, right? And
Mhm.
I think emphasizing that we have low tolerance for a lack of professionalism and that there are consequences is sort of the
Mhm.
key.
Yeah, I mean, I've been harassed in the last couple months at
Mhm.
an industry conference as well.
Yeah,
So it happens to the best of us in a
yeah,
variety of different scenarios.
yeah,
So look out for each other, right?
yeah.
Speak out to others. Others will also speak out when they see you speak
Hmm.
out, but also look out for each other because this
Yeah.
is a very real thing that is happening at conferences. All right, let's
Hmm.
let everybody know where we're going to be. So,
Hmm.
again, tomorrow we've got Supply Chain Unfiltered with Christine Barnhart. Make sure to click the attend button if you can't attend live. I've got a webinar with Supply Chain Brain and Reveal, a parcel shipping in style case study. That's happening on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to register at the link in the comments. And then next week, we're going live for Beyond Drayage TMS at 2 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to click the attend button because even if you can't attend live, I will send you the recording. All right, we went a little bit over, but we had so much to talk about today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us. Lars will be with me next week, so you're not going to want to miss that one. And Audrey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.